I'm very pleased to welcome back Stephanie Jolene, filmmaker, producer, and host. And we have a few other guests here today. In-Duk Lee. In-Duk is a Korean-Canadian writer and director, born in South Korea, raised in Halifax, Nova Scotia. In-Duk's debut short film, Baduk, premiered at Atlantic International Film Festival in 2021, where it won Best Atlantic Short. Baduk has continued to screen internationally and has won Best Short Film at the 2022 Screen Awards. Outside of directing, In-Duk has worked in TV, in a writer's room, as an assistant, and as a graphic designer in the art department. And to her right is Heather Young. Heather is a Canadian filmmaker originally from New Brunswick, now living in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. I always get a applause there, so people have Dartmouth pride. Heather graduated from University of New Brunswick in NSCAD and made several short films, Fish and Milk, that played at festivals all over the world and won many awards, too many to name here. Her first feature, Murmur, premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival, where it won the Fipresci Prize for Discovery Program and went on to win the Grand Jury Prize at the Slamdance Film Festival. She's now working on her second feature, There There. And finally, we have Ciel Crosby. Ciel has been active in the Nova Scotia film and television industry since 1993 and has been an independent talent agent in Halifax since 2003, well, 20 years ago. She has been a talent agent, actor, and acting coach. She graduated from Tennessee Temple University with a degree in speech communication theater in 1989. After a brief career in broadcast journalism, she happened into a job representing minors with Aspect Talent Agency in 1993. In 2003, Ciel, inspired by her mentor, John Dunsworth, and other industry heavyweights, decided to open her own agency to represent some of the best and most exciting young talents in Nova Scotia by creating Sky Talent Group. Welcome, everybody.
Thanks, Chrissy. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. This is the last of the panels this week, and the festival's almost over, so I hope everybody's been seeing a lot of movies and having a good time. Thank you all for being here. I want to do a quick land acknowledgement. We are in Nova Scotia. That is the land of the Mi'kmaq people. They were here first. There is an ongoing relationship that's very nuanced and ever-changing between the treaties, and I would like to say I'm an Indigenous person myself, but my family are from Labrador. We're Inuit, so this is not my land either, and we want to say thank you for the Mi'kmaq for allowing us to be here. Thank you for all of our great panelists today. Okay, Ciel, I'm actually just going to jump right in with you. Are you ready? Does everyone have their mics on? Okay. So as far as I can tell, you represent everybody in Nova Scotia. That's my goal. Pretty close? Okay. What's the biggest misconception about what you do? Whether from the public or actors.
From the public, that my job is glamorous. My job is really me sitting in a room alone on a computer and on a phone. So coming to the film festival is about the only glamour I get to do in the run of a year. And for actors, I think they don't understand that there's a lot. I'm working behind the scenes constantly. They know they get an audition, but they don't understand that I might have submitted them for 20 projects to get them that one audition. And I think that a lot of actors don't understand that it is it's a hard job. You're going to audition 1 in 13 to 1 in 15 times for each job you land. And, it can be, it's a hard job.
And you started in the industry as an actor, right? Mm-hmm. So did you see, especially here in Nova Scotia, did you see that there was a need for talent agents? And is that why you got into the industry?
I did see that there was a need. I actually completely got into it accidentally. I was teaching a course in acting while I was on parental leave from my other job, and a talent agency approached me and said, we have kids who want to get involved with acting and we need somebody to mentor them. And that's how I got involved. And as time I mean, it was 1993, so we're talking 30 years ago. Our industry was very, very small, and all of a sudden it started to grow and grow and grow, and it became very evident to me that I needed my own shop and to do things the way I wanted to do them. I'm just thrilled with what's happening in our industry. It's been, we've had some rough patches, but I think we're just growing consistently, and we have wonderful talent here. I think that's one thing that I, as an agent, and the other agents in town, have to fight the misconception that all the good talent is in Toronto. It's not. We have incredibly gifted actors here, and more for us to discover as well.
Do you get sad when they leave? I do.
I do.
I'm like, they leave and they go to Toronto, and I'm like, aw.
I do, especially, some of them you become very near and dear to you. I have actors who, they've been my actors since they were like 6 years old, and all of a sudden they're 25 and they moved to Toronto or London, England. And it is sad, but, it's kind of like...
They'll be back.
And watching people fly is worth it.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to talk to Heather and Induk, okay, because you guys are both directors and writers. So when you're doing the writing part, when you start writing a script, do you have a clear idea in your mind of what you want the characters to look like? Like, how specific is it in your head? Like, their age, sort of physical attributes, and maybe Heather, I'll start with you.
Is this on? Yeah, it is. Okay.
Yep.
When I am writing, I really try not to have. I guess I generally try not to have a very specific look in mind for who I would like to cast in that role. Age sometimes becomes kind of more part of the story. So sometimes age can be a bit more specific, I think, in the writing process, as it kind of reflects like different aspects of the story. But yeah, I've found that when I'm picturing a character, or especially when it comes to actually starting to cast, I really try to keep a very open mind about what how a person presents, or what their look is, because you don't want to get stuck into the mindset that, well, I pictured this person as such and such of a look, and this isn't, I'm seeing this performer and it's not how I pictured them at all. So I don't want that to influence how I perceive their presence on camera, or how I perceive their performance, because, a lot of the time you're really excited by someone who gave you something you weren't expecting, and they don't look anything at all like how you imagined the character, but that has to be kind of put aside so you can appreciate what each person is kind of bringing.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice for any filmmakers out there. And I know that you're in post-production for your second film, but we'll talk about Murmur, your first film that's already out, and some people may have seen it already. And with that character, she has a very unique look. She feels like very natural on camera. When you were writing, were you picturing something different? And then when you saw her audition, you changed that a little bit? Yeah,
that was, I guess, one of the experiences that kind of cemented that approach for me of not having a set in stone idea of what the character should look like. Because when I was writing that film, I had pictured the character as having a lot of kind of stereotypically feminine qualities. Someone who, is aging, but is really fighting the aging process by, doing a lot of things like getting a lot of work done, and that type of thing is kind of how I pictured the character. And, kind of like dyed hair and, long nails and, kind of some stereotypically more femme aspects, I guess. And yeah, when we saw Shan, she wasn't what I pictured at all, like nothing of what I pictured for that character, but she brought something really natural and interesting and unique. Like, she was very unique, I think. So yeah, that was kind of a process that kind of reestablished that idea that you shouldn't necessarily be stuck on what you think the character should look like, because that can kind of blind you to seeing the interesting things in other people.
Yeah, for sure. Did Shan know of what you originally wanted? Did you ever tell her?
No.
I mean, she has a great look too. It's just not exactly what you had on the page. And Doug, I'm going to ask you about your experiences casting, and if they've ever, what ended up on the screen, was that ever drastically different than the draft of the script?
Yeah. In my short, the first draft, I guess, like first few drafts were about a father and son. And if you've watched it, it's about a mother and daughter, which is very gendered. But I was kind of, with my own experiences having like grown up in like a heteronormative nuclear family. But yeah, the process through that wasn't really like it didn't start from like a creative impulse, like the change, which I would find it fascinating. But mostly like the pandemic sort of shut down everything really, and we couldn't bring in any actors in from outside of Nova Scotia because we were casting for Korean Canadian actors, and
Was the pool pretty small here?
yes, the pool is very small. There's very, very little Korean Canadian actors here, so we were looking nationally, and because we couldn't bring people in anymore, I kind of just had a bit of a hiatus and just thought about the people around me that I could work with and you know, in my life that I could cast potentially, and they just happened to be like more Korean women in my life. So yeah, and then I changed basically the entire script. So yeah, that was a bit of a process.
At what stage? Because it was you did that through the AFCOOPS Film 5 program, right?
Yes.
So did you submit with a father-son, or by then was it already mother-daughter?
Yeah, I submitted the father. So we were like 2 months out from like a shooting, and then yeah, COVID.
Both filmmakers, I'm asking you, do you ever worry about hurting people's feelings when you don't cast somebody? Or like you say somebody gets a call back and they get like really close, and then you're like, oh, sorry, we want the other person. No?
I just
No one
casted
has
my
feelings.
friends, so I
I'm always,
Oh,
I
yeah, of
always I
course,
say that
yeah.
because I'm always worried. I was like, I don't want to do a call back with anyone unless I'm 100% sure they're going to
Yeah,
be
no, it's
100%
brutal.
sure.
Rejecting people is brutal, of course. Yeah, it feels horrible.
CL, have you ever seen, is there, I feel like actors, if you're a professional actor, maybe even if you're not really used to acting, if that's your first thing, you sort of, I think most people have the idea like, this isn't guaranteed. I might not get this. Yeah. They're looking at other people. Is that something that you've had experience with people that you worked with over the years, that everyone's kind of cool with it? Or is there a little bit of like balancing some egos sometimes where you kind of have to, and we are filming this, so we won't say exactly the names of those people, but like sometimes I wonder if you're like, you have to kind of soothe them. No, you are good. Don't worry. Yeah.
It varies. I have some actors, I always tell everyone, audition and forget about it. Make the audition the thing, and then forget about it. If anything happens after the audition, great, but make the audition the thing. Some actors literally audition, go home, shred the paper or after their self-tape, and never think about it again. I have other actors who will call me multiple times to see if I know anything. And if they don't book it, was there anything that they did wrong? And usually it's not. Usually it's the director just meets the person who is the right person for the role. So yeah, I have to tell people a lot of times that this industry is not always fair, and you're a fantastic actor, an artist, but this was not your role. This was not your gig. And you know, that's part of my job, is to be their cheerleader and to listen when they're feeling down about that part of it. But it's also, the good part is when I get to call them and say, guess what, you've booked this part.
Is that your favorite part of the job?
That, and when people get surprise money, like if you've done a
How do we get surprise money?
So you do a tourism commercial, and 3 years later they decide to edit that footage and make a whole new commercial, and all of a sudden you get a big fat check.
Oh, I didn't know
and
it
you
worked
didn't know
that
it
way.
was coming, and it's surprise money. I love giving surprise money as well.
So can you tell me, Ciel, a little bit of like step by step what happens? So somebody has a script, say they have a feature film written, and they get telefilm money or they get money from somewhere. It's going to happen. They're starting in pre-production. What happens then? Do they send you like the full script? Do they send you a breakdown of each character, or what happens?
It varies. If it's if it's Adam McGoyan, say, I'm not going to get the full script. I'm going to get a breakdown from a casting director. A lot of directors will give me the whole script right away, and a lot of times they'll make me sign an NDA if they do.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, I sign a lot of NDAs.
What
yeah.
if it's like someone who's like never made a movie? Do you ever feel like, really?
Yes.
Because I would be so embarrassed if I asked someone to sign an NDA. Like,
Yes.
Yeah, like no one cares about your script.
yeah, that's how I feel. I'm like, someone's gonna steal my script. Come on.
So generally speaking, it's not the director. It's usually a casting director who
They
reaches
kind
out
of like
to me.
have to do it. Maybe it's just part of their.
Yeah. Now, if it's a local project, like I think you sent me materials directly because you did all your own casting. So sometimes the director or a producer will reach out to me directly, but then I just have to go through the breakdown, read as much as I can, and figure out who should be submitted for which character. And I try to honor what they've given me in that breakdown. If they're very specific about traits that this character needs to have, whether it's ethnicity or age or a specific special skill. You know, if you need a ballerina who can dance on point, I'm going to find you somebody who's a ballerina who can dance on point. And then I submit people to them, and then they pick who they want to audition. I love self-tapes because back in the days when we did everything live, you would see 5 or 6 people for a role in a feature film because that's all you had time for. Now in the era of self-tapes, they might see 50 people for that part, and it has opened doors in a huge way. Back at the first thing we did after the pandemic, when we were allowed to go back to work, was Chapel Wait, and local actors got very large roles in that through self-tapes. And I think before the pandemic, when they would be doing everything live, they wouldn't have even gotten into the door to audition. Right, yeah. So, so I like self-tapes, but I know not everybody does.
Well, I was going to ask the question to everybody on the panel about self-tape versus real life, and I'd never really thought of that, but that's a good point. Like, that's how a positive for self-tape that you do probably see more people that wouldn't otherwise have that opportunity. Indo, can I ask you about your process? Because you were in the middle of COVID, right? So you probably did you do everything over Zoom?
No, because I basically casted my friends.
Right. So you're like kind of in the room with people.
Yeah, I reached out and like I kind of like I went to them basically and did like a little private, like just me and them, and like I want to let's rehearse this and see how you're comfortable, like, you know, in front of a camera, and things like that. So I didn't really need to see anything on Zoom or anything, so I don't really know that experience.
Yeah. What about you, Heather? What's your take? I think you've done both, right? Some things on video and some things in real life. Do you have one you like better?
I have done both. Only casting the last, like the last feature that I shot. We did both. So we did. There was kind of like the two main roles. One was a younger woman, and one was an elderly woman. And I really knew that I couldn't do self-tapes for the older woman character because, you know, I was doing a lot of outreach to try to get people in that age group interested in auditioning.
What was the age like on the page? Was there a specific age?
Yeah, it was like 80, like 80s basically. But I was open to anyone like over 75. I think we said like over 75 was kind of what we were. Anyone over 75 could could apply. But yeah, a lot of the people that, you know, I made contact with in that age range, you know, they weren't even using email, let alone, you know, making their own self-tape and sending it into us. So that wasn't an option. So we did, for the younger character, we did both in-person and self-tapes. And then for the older character, we did just in person. Self-tapes actually have a lot of benefits, I find. You can cast a really wide net when you're asking for self-tapes. Like, the person doesn't have to, you know, be in the HRM in order to come in for an audition. And when you are doing like an open casting call, it can get quite overwhelming, like when you don't have a casting director. Like, we didn't have a casting director who was like fully managing all of that and all of the incoming, you know, potential audition people. So with the casting tapes, things can go kind of quickly. Like, as a, you know, someone has to organize it all, which is difficult. But at the same time, when you're doing in-person auditions, you're there face to face with the person. So you have to first like introduce yourself, and then you have to talk to them for a minute, and then, you know, you have to do the reading, and someone has to be there with you to read.
So much energy.
Yeah.
Rather
and
than
then,
just pressing
you know,
play on a video.
sometimes, like, as a director, I mean, I don't mean this in a mean way, but sometimes you know really quickly that it's not the right fit. So when you're in an in-person audition, you might know in the first 30 seconds that it's not the right fit, but you're not going to be mean and be like, okay, it's been 30 seconds, like, let's call this off. So, you know, you have to like go through the whole audition, and sometimes sometimes I also feel bad if I, you know, normally in an audition, you do a read of the scene, and then you give the person, you know, some feedback, some suggestion or direction, and have them read again. And you know, sometimes actors know if they don't get that second go, it's
Right.
like a
Like
little bit of a
they do it
tell.
once, and you're like, great,
Yeah.
you'll hear from us. No,
So
whatever.
even sometimes I feel like, less so with people who have never auditioned before. Like, if someone who
Yeah, I
has
guess-
never auditioned before and I can tell right away that it's not the right fit, then I won't have them read again. But sometimes if it's someone who's a little bit more experienced, I'm like, well, I don't want to make them feel bad. So anyway, the point is that in-person auditions can take a lot longer, whereas if you're going through self-tapes, you can kind of, you know, if after 30 seconds you know for sure it's not the right fit, you just move on to the next tape. That being said, you can get a lot of self-tapes. So, you know, that in itself can be time-consuming. But yeah, it's a very different experience, the self-tape versus the in-person. And you know, I always record my in-person anyway, so it's like you can watch it back in addition to that, and share it with colleagues to get feedback in both scenarios. But yeah, there's pros and cons to both, I think.
Yeah. Does anyone here not know like anything about auditioning? Like, should we go through the like step by step, like even how an audition happens? So what would happen is someone would have a script, and then they would decide they want to cast for that role. And also, there's a big question of whether you're going to go union or not union. So some of you in the room already might know this, but for those who don't, you can cast, like, there's an acting union called ACTRA in Canada, and if you want to cast one of the actors in that union, you have to go through different steps, versus if you're just casting your friends or somebody that you saw on Instagram, and that's kind of a different process. But I guess one thing that they would both have in common is that you would give you would often give a scene to them. Like you would send them what they call sides, probably, which is like a scene from your movie. And then those people would, you hear a phone over here? That's okay. It's okay, probably fine. I'll just keep talking about what casting is. Yeah, and then so the actor would take those sides, so a scene, and they would either go in person and then just, would often have the script in front of them and kind of read the lines with the person. And if it's on video, then they're reading the lines with somebody on video. So that's kind of basic. But we are going to have a question and answer period, so if anybody has more specific questions about how that goes, then we can do it. Should we talk a little bit about union and not union? Because there are, I think, probably pros and cons to going really either way. And then sometimes if you're casting somebody very specific and you need a very specific look or ethnicity or something, then you could be like, look, there's just nobody in the pool of ACTRA locally who fits this, so I'm going to have to go outside the union. And sometimes it's just better for your project to go non-union. So, Induk, you did non-union, is that right?
Yeah, non-union. They were all sort of like first-time actors too, so like such a different process. And the choice wasn't, from like a producer's point of view or anything at all. It was, because of the low supply of Korean Canadian actors here, and that's.
Have you thought about, or maybe you don't know yet, about the next project you do, if you would want to go the actor route or go more non-union or kind of first-time actors or try it all?
I found it sort of, I guess one of the things with like not like non-union and also like first-time actors is that like you kind of have to explain a lot of things to them, and like so one of the characters is Kat. The actor was my like high school best friend's mom, and I told her it was like a 5-minute film, and I brought my camera over for a test, and I like shot her for like 5 minutes. She's like, "Okay, is that it? Like, is that the film?"
She thought you were doing
like, oh no, like this is gonna be a few days. There's gonna be a whole crew, and
I've had a similar experience.
Yeah, totally. So there's a lot of that kind of, I guess, hand holding, but just so that they know what to expect, and like they know, okay, like you're gonna be doing this with like a bunch of people also in the room, and I guess another thing that I found personally difficult was that like some were more comfortable speaking in Korean than others, and like I was the only person who could speak Korean in the whole production, so like I was the sort of communicator for like every single little thing to talk with the cast, so that was pretty demanding, but I think it also made them comfortable in that I wanted to do that because I wanted them to be comfortable, so it sort of worked. But the next one, hopefully I'll have someone to help me.
Heather, what about you with your experiences with sort of casting non-professional actors, maybe first-time actors? You have similar stuff where they sort of don't really know how movies are made?
Yeah, absolutely. I, for a while now, have been working with non-professional actors, and I mean, there's various reasons why I kind of chose to do that, but with the union versus non-union, I do find it most people probably know this already, but there's kind of a rule that if you cast a union actor, your whole production has to be union. So all of your actors, therefore, have to be union. So it's not easy to just choose one actor from the union and also choose one actor that is not in the union. It is possible. You have to go through kind of a process to get a permit where you kind of prove that you've like auditioned everyone in the union that could possibly play that role, and you didn't find the person that you wanted. So then you can get a permit from the union that will allow you to cast a non-union performer. And I understand, the union is there to, promote their performers and protect their performers, and, I get it, but it does become kind of challenging if you like to kind of have the freedom to cast whoever you want, whoever you think is the most exciting choice for that particular role. It becomes challenging when you have to take those kind of considerations into it, and you know, it could be time consuming if you have to kind of fight for this, you know, fight for 1 or 2 or 3 or however many non-union performers you want to include in your production. So I find it to be a barrier to casting in the union. But also I just kind of found a way to work with non-professional performers in a sense that I started working with people who had never been in a film before, kind of similar to Induk. And I started doing that kind of as something to help myself more so than to help the film itself. It was more so I needed to kind of start working with people that I felt very at home with and very comfortable with, in order for myself to be able to kind of relax and actually remember that it was an enjoyable thing to do. You know, making a film was enjoyable. And when I started working with, like, you know, family as performers, it just took a lot of pressure off of me in the sense that I didn't feel like I had to perform. I didn't have to be a director. I wasn't afraid of saying the wrong thing, or I wasn't afraid of not looking like I was doing a good job, you know, in front of an actor who is looking to me to be a good director. It was just kind of, you know, oh well, that's just my cousin. Like, what does she know? You know, she doesn't know if I'm totally screwing this up. So I found making some shorts that way really helped me remember that filmmaking could be pleasurable for myself. So then I just kind of kept on that path, except instead of just casting, you know, my mother or my
In
cousin.
every movie, it's just you and your mom.
I you know, started auditioning people who had never been in a film before. So similar in the sense that they didn't have a lot of expectations of, you know, of what I was going to be doing. I didn't feel like I was letting them down as much as I would be letting down maybe someone who was more experienced. And that just became the kind of way that I became used to working. So yeah, for the last several projects, I've been working with pretty much exclusively people who have never been in a film before, and that does come with some challenges in the sense that they don't know what they're in for. You know, they think it's going to be fun the whole time, even though I tell them beforehand it's not going to be fun the whole time. You know, so. And yeah, you have to explain, you know, a lot of what's happening and what's going to happen, and just kind of the whole process of making a film. But again, it's, you know, it's me trying to find ways of not being intimidated, or trying to find ways of, you know, feeling less stressed or something like that. But again, there's pros and cons either way.
Well, imposter syndrome seems to go hand in hand with being being a creative who's trying to make their career in the art that they're, imposter syndrome is pretty common. So CL, you work with people that are mostly union, right? Or is it all union?
I have some non-union as well
Okay.
but mainly union. Yeah.
So for those out there that might be thinking about making their first film, or thinking about whether or not they should cast union or not union, we've heard about some benefits and challenges. CL, do you want to talk to maybe the benefit of going union?
First of all, I'm shocked that you would ever not be the most confident person on set because you make beautiful films. um, the decision to go union or non is often related to budget, how much money you have to make the thing. I think the benefits to going union are you get to go to a pool of actors who know the deal. They're going to walk on set. They know exactly what it is you want them to do. They've prepped their character. They come with a creative mind. They're ready to work. For actors, when you're an actor, you want to be in the union. There's all kinds of benefits to being in the union. I also understand what you're saying about working with non-union, and you have done very well working with non-actors and getting beautiful performances out of them. I think that's a unique skill you have, and it's a beautiful thing. Most people, when they start out, they will start out making non-union things. It'll be non-union shorts. If you do something like AFCOOP Film 5, they have a training agreement and you can use union or non-union, same as if you're at NASCAD or NSCC. So there is some short films that are union as well. But really, it comes down to how much money do you have and how can you make the thing with the money you have. And sometimes that means, unless you're under a special agreement with ACTRA, there's micro-budget special agreements there where the actors get paid, like 1/5 of what they normally would. So those do exist as well, but I mean, money drives a lot of these decisions that we make. And there are some wonderful non-union actors here in the province, and I'm sure across the Maritimes. But we have a really large pool of union actors already.
Feels like if you're an actor, most of them probably want to become union because, and we won't stick on this topic too much longer because we will go to questions, and if people want to ask more specifics about that, maybe we can do it then. But I will advocate for, like, even if you do go non-union, you probably should still kind of go abide by the rules of ACTRA, which is like you don't make people work ridiculous hours, you feed people, and like kind of the basic stuff like that. That is one benefit of the union, is like you make sure you'll be treated okay. But I would say even if you're going non-union, still be nice and treat people well. Cielo, I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I'm interested to know if you've ever experienced working with somebody who do actors lie about their age or their skill set to try to get a role? Never happens probably, right?
Yes.
How do you deal with that sort of thing?
Oh, God. There's nothing I hate worse than having a producer call me. There was a tourism commercial a few years ago, and it was an athletic event. I won't say too much because I don't want to out the actor accidentally, but it was an athletic endeavor and this person had said they could do said athletic endeavor. They absolutely could not do said athletic endeavor. And I have a producer calling me I'm like, he said he could.
So they were cast and they were shooting the commercial,
Yes.
and that's when it came to light.
Yes. Yeah. So I routinely tell actors, don't lie on your resume. If you took 3 horseback riding lessons when you were 8 and you're 40, you should not have horseback riding on your resume. It doesn't happen a lot, but yes, it does happen. And we all hate it when it does, including the actor, because then they end up feeling really stupid.
Yeah,
right?
I know. I feel bad because I'm like, oh, that must be so embarrassing. Did they think they could just kind of fake it, maybe?
Yes.
Ooh.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And then do you ever give advice to actors that you work with? I mean, other than don't lie on your resume, but do you ever have to, or I guess to actors you're working with or anyone who might be watching are there big no-nos? Like, don't do this in an audition. Either for the actor or the filmmaker, actually.
Every once in a while, I meet an actor who wants to rewrite the sides every time they audition. And I don't recommend you do that because screenwriters spend a lot of time and effort on that script. And if they want you to improvise, they will have you do that. Self-tapes, when I have my actors do a self-tape, I give them a sheet, like a cheat sheet. This is what a self-tape needs to look like. And I'm very specific in, you shoot landscape, not portrait, you need this. And you don't really self-tapes now. Everybody's doing them with their phone. If you've got a blank wall in a house and some decent natural light, that's all you need. You don't need any big fancy studio. But yes, I give advice all the time. Sometimes I feel like I'm everybody's mom, which is
Oh,
fine.
that's nice.
Which is fine.
Will you be
But
my
maybe
mom, CL? Will you be my mom?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be, how many people do you represent?
I don't know.
We have a, okay, that's okay.
A lot. It
yeah,
changes,
ballpark.
and because especially with because our age range right now in working actors is 4 to 86. So it's a large age
Wow, yeah.
range. And the kids come and go. I find a lot of kids start to lose interest in middle school age, around 13, 14, when they're no longer little and cute. They're still cute, but they're teenagers. That's when a lot of them lose interest. And then another big shift happens when people go off to university. And then when they're done university, when they decide to start a career. So the people come and go all the time. And people move away.
Yeah, that makes sense. You just mentioned that in the audition, people shouldn't be rewriting sides. Induka, I'm going to ask you, do you have a preference of when people audition, or even once you've cast them, whether or not they should be improvising a little or ad-libbing, or would you rather them stick to the script?
So the one film I made, it's all voiceover. And
Oh yeah, I guess that's true. Right? I've seen it. I forgot that part. But they're
it's
still
okay, it's
acting.
okay. They're still acting.
Like maybe they could like pick up the glass in like a way that you didn't
yeah,
think they would pick up the glass or something.
I think I don't like. I'm sure like the way I direct will evolve over time. But when I was doing Paduk, I wanted specific scenes and shots because I just had it all laid out in my head. And so I did want those things to happen, and everyone was very like good at portraying exactly what I wanted. So I didn't really run into like any sort of rewriting or anything. But I actually like after I shot it and put it all together, I rewrote like my like voiceover part because after I shot it, I was like, okay, well basically rewrote the script for their performance.
Okay.
So that was kind of my process.
What about you, Heather? I know that. Tell us about your improvising or ad-libbing when you work.
Yeah, I do a lot of that. So I guess the way that my process evolved for working with non-professionals or first-timers is that my goal when working with them is that they're not trying to act. So I find with first-timers, not all of them, but a lot of the time, if they're trying to act, it's going to be bad. So what I'm trying to do is to have them just be themselves, as much as that's possible when there's a camera. And that's kind of what I'm looking for a lot of the time in auditions is who can have a camera on them and still just be their natural state, and have it come across as them being who they normally are in their day-to-day life. So that's kind of what I'm looking for, because a lot of the time, you put a camera on someone and they just change. Like, they
Yeah.
can't help it. It's just natural. But there is that rare person that, for whatever reason, they remain themselves in a kind of natural way. So I'm always on the lookout for those people. And yeah, when I do work with a non-professional, I don't have them memorize dialogue for the most part. So on Murmur, the first feature that I did, there was no memorization at all of the dialogue. Shan just read the script, I think, once, and just kind of put it aside.
But maybe that kind of worked for what you specifically were looking for. Rather than someone you kind of
Yeah,
maybe didn't want someone who was
sometimes-
really rehearsed and knew exactly what she was going to say.
Exactly. So, you know, I've found, you know, over the years that a lot of the time if someone just speaks in their own words, it becomes more believable if they're that type of person that can be themselves when there's a camera pointed at them.
Right.
So that's what I have been trying to do. I don't know if I'll work that way forever, or, you know, maybe I won't, maybe I'll, because, you know, sometimes it comes with challenges. It comes with challenges, definitely. But again, you know, as CL was saying, you know, budget often dictates what limitations we have in our filmmaking practice. And, you know, Murmur was a micro budget, so that, you know, casting non-union did have benefits in that way. And then for, the feature that I shot in the spring, the older character, there was 0 dialogue memorization there, so I just basically, you know, when I'm shooting a scene where the performer has not memorized any dialogue, I just kind of tell them, you know, so remember this is the scene where such and such happens, and, you know, I might need a specific, I might need something specific to be gotten across in terms of information. So we like, remember we have to talk about this, and this is, you know, this is where we're going with this scene, or this is what this scene is about. And then they'll just do it in their own words. And that can go poorly and it can go well. It depends. It's much more of I think a gamble than when you're working with, you know, a very professional, experienced actor who has, you know, a lot of techniques and skill that they're bringing to the table. So yeah, it takes a very kind of specific approach to work with non-professionals, or first-timers, I guess is a better term. But yeah, I mean, yeah, and on the film I shot in the spring, some of the younger performers were more familiar with the dialogue that I had written, and did bring in some of those lines, but I never insist on that or even really encourage it. Once in a while there will be a line that I really want, and if there is one, like a specific line that I really think is important to be included, I will kind of go rehearse that with one of the performers. But most of the time, the dialogue is I guess what you would call improvised, but I don't call it improvised. I just call it talking, you know, because I'm
You're
trying,
telling them kind of what they need to do in the scene, and then they'll, like you said, say it the way that they would say it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
Rather than these are the
just
exact
try to
words.
imagine yourself in this situation. If you were in this situation, I mean, it can, like I said, it can go either way. Sometimes people have a tendency, especially if they're nervous, to talk too much. So a lot of my process is just getting it to be less and less and less. So, you know, say if I do 5 takes, my direction the entire time might be like, that was great, say less the next time. And then
Okay,
say
yeah.
less the next time, say less the next time, until I get it down to something more minimal. And that's generally what I do in the edit as well, is just like cut out a whole bunch of talking.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, you know, pros and cons, and there's different approaches. So I don't know what I'm doing.
No, you know what you're doing. We all know what we're doing. We all know and don't know what we're doing. Chrissy, did you say 10 minutes? I was looking at you for the 30-minute mark. I can't believe we only have 10 minutes left. That went really fast. I didn't talk about gender neutral roles yet, so I'll ask you a real quick question on that, and then we'll see if anyone else has questions. Is that cool? Are you seeing more and more people either writing in like gender neutral or actually like a non-binary character, and maybe like this role is written for a man, but also a woman or someone of a different gender could do it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm seeing that more and more on breakdowns. Specific roles will say all genders, which is a huge step forward, because it used to be that people would lock in their mind that the store owner was going to be a 50-year-old man. Well, why couldn't that be a 50-year-old non-binary person or a 50-year-old woman? Like, if it's not directly tied to story, I'm seeing that more and more, and I think it's great.
That is great. And do you see, are there a lot of things coming to you that they really are looking for someone who's non-binary, like the role is non-binary, and they want to cast someone who is also non-binary?
Yes, if the role is listed as non-binary, it's very clearly laid out in the breakdown that they want the actor to be non-binary. 20 years ago, we would have a cis person playing a trans person. We're not doing that anymore, and I think that's powerful because marginalized voices need to be elevated.
Agree. We will go to some questions. Anyone? Oh, right here. Oh yeah, we're gonna give you a microphone. Don't get nervous though.
It's already on. So my question is about casting for chemistry between actors. How can you cast, if you don't have them both in the same room, how do you discover that? Is it just on the day, or do you have someone in mind and then you cast someone else? How does that work?
Yeah, like maybe you cast your lead and then you have different people reading or something. Does anyone want to take that with any experience in that way?
Well, I think it's one of the hardest parts of casting is chemistry casting, and it's very it's something I feel like I'm trying to get better at, but some of the kind of things that I've done, certainly the chemistry read is one thing that can be done. So if you've done a lot of auditions and you've narrowed it down, or perhaps you even cast a lead or one of the roles, you can then do what's known as a chemistry read, is where you bring in the person that you've already cast and then read them with 3, 4, 5 other performers that you've kind of narrowed down. You're like, well, I like these 5 people, but like, who's going to work best with this person that they're going to be acting with in the film? So I've definitely done that to see how they interact together, and even outside of the scene, do they kind of get along as people? Do they kind of hit it off when they're in the same room together? I find I've never had to do it in terms of like a romantic connection for a film. I think that would be probably the most challenging, would be to find 2 people who have kind of, that kind of a spark or that kind of a connection or chemistry. I've never had to do that. That would be terrifying, I think. But, in terms of friendship and or working relationship or things like that, I've done chemistry reads, which can be helpful. And I in terms of self-tapes, I have cast someone and then, decided like, oh, I like these 5 people from self-tapes, but I want to actually bring them in person to read with my lead, or to read with the person who's already cast. Another thing that I like to do when you're actually shooting is, if there's an important scene between those 2 characters where you're really kind of showcasing their bond or their connection or that type of a thing, I like to schedule that later in the film, because filmmaking is it's a real bonding kind of process between the crew and the cast and everybody being together for so much time. So on the film that I did in the spring, there's 2 young women who are in the film, and they're supposed to be best friends and roommates. And they really got on very well together. Behind the scenes, they always, had lunch together, and they were, following each other on Instagram, and they were, always chatting and having fun together. So we had kind of a scene where they have kind of a serious talk, and that was scheduled later in the shoot. And by then, they were kind of like friends. They already had like kind of a rapport with each other. And I remember a couple of the crew members saying after we shot that scene, like, I'm really glad we waited and shot this later because now, they're like, they have so much rapport together that we were able to kind of capture that. In addition to what the scene would have been otherwise, we also had them kind of like joking around together. And but definitely, it's definitely challenging, I think. Chemistry, yeah, tough.
It's tough. We will go to a couple more questions. Yep, right there. Oh, I think there's two people next to each other that had their hand up. So you choose which one goes first.
Hi.
Hi.
I just had a quick question on how do you get into like casting? So is it typically like going the same route as like if you did start off like as a set PA and then move your way up, or is it kind of like you take a different process?
Like if you want to become a casting agent yourself?
Yeah, or a casting director.
Or a casting
something.
director?
Normally, I think you would work as a casting assistant with an established casting director. So that's how you learn the ropes. But actually, set PA would be great as well. And I personally think that the best casting people are also people who maybe have done some acting themselves so they understand what it feels like for the actor to be in that spot. But the more knowledge you have about the industry, the better. But definitely starting off as a casting assistant to one of the big casting directors would be an incredible way to start.
Yeah, there was somebody right next to that person with their hand up.
Yeah, hi. Have any of you ever done anything wrong with working with a union actor member? If anything, not familiar. I
Like
don't
if
know
the
this is
union
right
got
term,
mad at us sort of thing?
But the union got upset at you and ended up with a grievance, if there is such a process.
Oh, I think there is a process. I don't know much about it. Do you know much about how that would go?
Well,
I've never done anything more wrong,
a
by the way.
grievance would be it would be against production. So I wouldn't be grieved by the union. In order for a grievance to be filed, it has to be they're a signatory to the IPA, and they've done something that is not in keeping with the spirit of what's supposed to happen according to the IPA. They do happen now and then, but not a whole lot. Most people are pretty anxious to follow the rules.
And we were talking a few days ago on another panel about intimacy coordinating and safety on set and stuff. So that might be an issue that might be something where someone does have an issue with not feeling safe, and that would be a grievance, I think, as well, right? Yes. Okay. Right here in the pink. Oh, right, Mike. I forgot there was a microphone.
Thank you. I want to congratulate Heather on the film Murmur. I was so impressed when I saw it. She needs an applause. I never forgot that movie. So congratulations on that. I'm also interested in how you approach the limitations of being an ACTRA member versus a non-union member, and how does a non-union member aspirant get started in the business? Where do you suggest they begin?
So, like, if you're already a non-union actor, or like just the
No,
very
just
beginning?
very beginning.
Well, first, I would recommend that you go and take some classes. I personally like Kirsten Howell. And I guess I'm putting a plug in for her. She's teaching what she calls the LA technique, which is acting for film at Neptune Theatre, but it's a specific acting for film class. I would highly recommend that. The other thing I would recommend is be on the lookout for short films that you can audition for. I love short films. They provide wonderful opportunities for actors, for everyone, to continue to grow our skill set. Some other things I would recommend you do is maybe look into community theater, Theatre Arts Guild, Dartmouth Players, there's Bedford Players. Just to get your feet wet, just to find a community, to find other actors, other like-minded people. And then I would also recommend you sign up with the casting agencies in town, Ballyhoo and Hennessy Casting, and maybe do some background so you can see what being on set actually looks like.
Yeah.
Ballyhoo, yeah.
Bally with a B?
Yeah.
Ballyhoo.
Yeah, I would also
Good
add to
advice.
that just what CL was saying about doing short film work. You know, directors and writers start off making short films, and you know, if they're lucky, they get to eventually, you know, work on a feature or work in television or some longer format stuff. So you know, if a lot of the times, you know, if you form a strong relationship with you know, a writer or director, or for that matter, other crew members, you know, working on short form content, then that's, you know, a great connection to have moving forward as those people, you know, progress in their careers and you know, could provide more opportunities down the road.
Good advice, friends. I think we have a few more. Maybe no, we have to wrap. We're wrapping. Sorry.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much. That was
Yeah,
great.
thank you so much to our panelists.